friends, and welcome to the School Librarian Learning Network podcast. I'm Steve Tatro, also known as Dr. T Loves Books, and I love talking about all things related to school libraries. I may be an old dog, but I'm always trying to learn new tricks. That's why in each episode of the SLLN podcast, I'll chat with a school librarian about a lesson, program, or activity they love. Hopefully, this can be a place for school librarians to get ideas and find new ways to engage with their students and staff. As a good friend likes to say, we're better together. So I hope this podcast will help school librarians connect with and learn from each other. The opinions and ideas shared in this podcast by myself and my guests are our own and do not reflect those of our school districts. And because school librarians always strive to be good digital citizens, I cite sources when using material that is not my own. Without further ado, let's get to this week's episode. Hey everybody, we are back, and I have got a friend who is so far away, but this is going to be awesome. Sarah, thank you so much for being here today. Sarah Ducharme, welcome. Before we dive in, why don't you take a second, tell us a little about who you are and where you are, especially where you are, because this is in itself, very fascinating to me.
Hi, Steve. Thank you so much for inviting me. I am living in Mumbai, India. My husband and I have been working at schools abroad for almost 30 years, and I'm the secondary librarian at Oberoi International School in Mumbai. And this is my third year at the school and my 15th year as a school librarian.
That is really something. So I've got so many questions. How did you end up as a sort of a traveling librarian, as it were? Like, how did that come about?
Well, we started as teachers, and back when we were first married, we thought it would be fun to try living abroad, and we just got hooked. We started in Beirut, and from there, it just was a fabulous way to see the world and still go home. At least once a year, if not twice a year, we go home and see family. So we feel like we're able to do what we love and travel. And it's been great. We raised our family abroad, and there's a whole other world out there. If you're okay with, some picking up and moving and those kinds of things.
I certainly admire the folks who have that gene that they don't have to bring everything they own with them everywhere they go, because I feel like that is my absolute least favorite part of having to move, is just got to get all the stuff. So I am in awe of your ability to be able to pick up and go. So you were teaching. How did you end up getting into school librarianship?
Well, I taught English, middle school English, for 15 years. And at one of our schools in El Salvador, I just started to feel that I wanted to do something else in a school. I loved being in schools, but I wanted something that would put me in touch with more teachers, more students, kind of a more of a whole school kind of a position. And library just seemed like the natural fit. And to be honest, even though I love teaching, it's definitely where I belong. So it's been a fabulous move for me.
Well, that's wonderful. I'm also, and I don't want to put you on the spot here, but I'm kind of curious, how many places have you been? You've already mentioned El Salvador, you mentioned Beirut, you've mentioned India. Just alone, that's more traveling than I've ever done in my life. And I'm assuming there's a couple more places in there.
Yes, we also lived in Lima, Peru, and Shenzhen, China.
It's got to be so fascinating to see all those different cultures and experience those places.
Yes. And actually, I forgot, the place where we were living the longest for 9 years was in Budapest, Hungary. Yep.
Wow. Huh.
So, yeah.
That is, we could probably just spend a week and a half just talking about all the amazing places you've been. But we're going to try and bring it around to focus on, you were here to tell us a little bit about how you're building reading culture. And I have been looking over some of the stuff that you shared, and it's just really beautifully put together. And I'd love to hear you tell us a little bit about, how did you sort of come to the conclusion that this was something you needed to work on in your school?
Well, I was lucky in this school. I started at this school as a maternity cover, actually. My husband is the head of the companion school down the road. And so the school gave me a position in the library, but they already had a head librarian when I first started. And before she went on maternity cover, she convinced the English department to come into the library with their classes once per cycle.
Hmm,
And so that was grades 6 through 10, making a commitment in the English department to come into the library for reading.
nice.
Um, and when they started to come in, I thought, well, here they are for some reading, but they weren't in the habit of coming into the library regularly, so they didn't have things to read.
Right.
And so I started a program of, at the beginning of each of their library sessions, getting going with some book talks or little things to kind of hook them on what the library could offer.
Uh-huh. That's interesting that this is what we're talking about, because literally yesterday I was giving a some, not book talks, but I had a teacher come in and be like, my students need a new book and they're kind of not really sure where to go next. So we spent literally a chunk of the period just talking about, where do we even look for new stuff? Like, how do we find new books? And
Yeah,
I have in my spare time been working on this slide deck of how to find your next read. And it started out with like 3 slides, and now it's like 40 slides long as I keep adding, oh, well, you can look here and do this and try that. And it's like, there's so many things out there, but you have put together this beautiful LibGuide that really helps, I think, make it easy for kids to see these things, because I know the fewer barriers we put between them and finding those books, the better. And they are so visually oriented that I think you've done this beautiful, beautiful project that I think is probably really helpful to them. So it's interesting to sort of hear that this was something that you've been working on and building. And I love that your English department is there to kind of be on board with this, because that's, in my mind, if you can get any kind of a classroom teacher on board with bringing them to the library, that's the biggest hurdle.
absolutely. Absolutely. So it was great because having them, knowing they were going to be coming basically twice a month, it meant, okay, that's great, but let me add some structure to this so that I'm not just, grabbing books at random. And then after kind of doing it for a couple of years, this year I said, gee, maybe I can be doing more than just, the usual book talk, and make them more visual, um, just make them more engaging, instead of just talking about books randomly.
Uh-huh.
Um,
It's always a
so,
challenge when you're doing the book talks too, that like there's only so many book talks in a row you can do before you kind of lose them. So
right.
there's that element as well of like, okay, how do I give them enough to look at without completely just, shutting them down? So,
Yes. Yes. I think of it like selling books. And so that's kind of my measure of, did it go well, is how many of the books that I talked about actually got checked out today.
yeah, yeah.
Um,
That's my metric too. I always say, oh, I sold 5 books today. I sold 10 books today.
so one of the ones that we did is called Save a Buck. And the idea of this is that I have one book for however many kids are in the class. So it's a good one if you are really comfortable and familiar with lots and lots of books in your collection. And so I just grab, 20 books that I think will be fun, and I talk about them really, really fast. Just a sentence, maybe two about each book, show it. And the kids like these because they know that any book I'm talking about, they can actually have. They just have
Mm.
to be the first one to raise their hand and they get it.
Oh, neat. Almost like
And
an online auction, like you got to get your bid in.
exactly, exactly. And so I do it save a buck. So when they say they want the book, then I give them the book with this little bookmark that's designed to look like a dollar. The idea, you saved yourself a little bit of money getting a book from the library instead of from a store.
Nice.
Um, so that's been fun because the challenge is talking about the books, and then at the end they all race to the front to see which ones they can grab. And um,
Love adding that physical element in there. It's like
yeah.
in my mind, I'm now like picturing, oh, maybe I'll set the library up like a Nickelodeon obstacle course where the kids have to like kind of climb over the table to get the books. No, that's maybe going a little too far, but
Well, it's tricky because in this library, a lot of teachers use it as a workspace. So I have to kind of balance, what I think is fun with, some
right.
level of work atmosphere. But so the save a buck have been good.
I can
Um,
imagine. I mean, I'm as soon as you get kids like that little bit of competition, it's going to just become a thing. They're going to have
Yeah.
to. They just can't help themselves. So I love that you add that element in there. It's so simple, but such a brilliant thing to do. I'm definitely 100% stealing that. So thank you for that.
The other one that I have been doing is called Beat the Clock book talks.
Okay.
And so these are, it's, you can do it for any kind of book, but for this particular version, I took my top 100 middle school favorites and divided them into 4 different sessions. And in each session, I talk about 25 of these of my favorite middle school books. And I have it on a timer. The slides are on a timer. So I have to talk about the book before the slide moves. And if I don't, then I have to stop. I'm not allowed to continue. And so the kids like to see if I can do it. It's set to, I don't know, 25 seconds or something like that. Like you
Uh-huh.
really have to get through it quickly.
Man,
And then while I'm talking, the cover is there. And so the slide moves on to the next cover. And um, a quick way to talk about a lot of books in a short time.
that's a great idea. I always find myself just getting so wrapped up and I want to tell you everything about this book. I want to give you all the reasons it's so great. And I definitely just go way too long on my book talk. So this idea of building in a timer very specifically, and again, adding that sort of almost a challenge element to it that the students are there to like, oh, is you going to make it? Oh, I don't know. Building in that timer is such a great idea. Huh.
They love
All
to see
right.
me mess up. That's for sure.
Yeah. Oh, they love seeing the mistakes.
Yeah.
Love that. Nice.
Another one that we do, this is a little bit different than book talks, but I know a lot of people do book tasting types of events where they have
Uh-huh.
the books on the table. And, maybe it's set up like a restaurant or something like that. But recently, I had a teacher who was doing a unit in language arts connected with World War II. And she wanted the kids to have exposure to lots of different books about World War II, fiction, nonfiction, graphics, whatever we had.
Uh-huh.
And so I gathered a whole bunch of different books with that topic on the different tables. And then I gave them a bingo sheet where they needed to look within that stack of books and try to find, one set in a story set in France or a nonfiction book that had a timeline or, different things that really forced them to get into the books and engage with the text a bit. Because
Huh.
I've seen that sometimes the book tastings, the kids just kind of, they rifle through all the books, but they don't really spend time.
Uh-huh.
So this was a way to kind of give them almost like a little scavenger hunt feel for things to find in the books to get them
That's
to engage with
great.
them a little bit more. And that's an
Huh.
easy thing you could do with really any kind of a topic.
Yeah, like that gamification element of it is so brilliant because, like you said, I mean, they'll sit there and when we do book tastings, I see that so many of the kids will grab a book that has a cover that looks interesting to them. That's all they'll look at. And then, as soon as they're done being interested in that, or as soon as, the required time of sitting there is up, they just move on to the next table and find the next cover that one they want to grab. And like you get those fights over, oh, that book has that cover. Give me that. I don't want to, look at this one.
Yeah.
Building in that element of, well, so each one of these books has something that you're trying to find. Oh
Yep.
boy.
And speed dating with books is another fun way to do it. I know a lot of
Uh-huh.
people will do that, where the kids have a certain amount of time and then they have to go to the next book. One way to do that, I can't do it in this library because I do have a little bit of a quiet feel in this library, but in my old library in Peru, we did musical chairs with this idea. So I put a whole bunch of bean bags in the center of the library, a book on each bean bag, played some music, and the kids wandered around. When the music stopped, they had to sit at that bean bag and look at that book. And
Love that.
it's, just a sneaky way to make it seem a little bit more fun. Of course, the books have to be great, ones that I know they're going to get hooked on quickly. Um, but just a different way for them to see how to be in the library.
Yeah, and I love that so many of these you're building in these elements of movement because I know a lot of our kids have trouble just sitting in one place for a even a short period of time. So you're giving them all these different ways to interact with the space and sort of engage their bodies, engage their minds, like look at things in a different perspective. Man, this is so great. Wow. I am just
I have
buzzing. Sorry.
I have one more. I have one
Yes,
more
absolutely.
specifically for book talks. Um, and this one is just visual book talks. So for these, I don't have any cover of the book or anything like that. I'll often hold up the book, but I will make a collage of different images that connect to the character, the setting,
Ah,
anything about the conflict. And so I'll just show kind of a collage on the screen as I'm talking about the story. And it's amazing how some of these visual hooks beyond the cover will just kind of stay in the kid's mind a little bit longer. Um, and so these are more time consuming. I do these for my books that are on our kind of recommended list. I call them
mhm.
the OIS reads. Some people have a core collection, something that you're kind of pushing, as a recommended set of books for that school year.
Mhm.
Because they're more time consuming, I don't do them often. But
Yeah.
for this particular set of books that I'm recommending each year, I'll do these visual ones. And because of that visual element, the kids can they'll come back and say, "What was that one you told us about that it was coffee beans and there was a picture of, a map of Africa?" And I'm like, "Oh yeah, I know the one you're talking about."
Huh. That's awesome. Wow. Oh boy. And I mean, I imagine if you had like student library helpers or something, that'd be a great task for them to like, oh, what's a book you've read? Let's build one together. Or even going to your English class teachers and saying like, hey, why not have the kids do one of these as their independent reading sort of accountability
Yes,
this month or something?
absolutely. And they
Oh,
love to do those kinds of things.
yeah.
Um, they like to make visual book lists, which I think
Mm.
you've probably seen before, where they're just paper, and the kids can kind of flip through and see about a bunch of ideas at one time.
Mm-hmm.
And so
Yeah.
they'll make those for me sometimes to add to our binder.
Nice.
Yeah.
Oh, I love that. These are student helpers that are doing this for you, or students, just general students?
It's not that organized, really. It's just what I kind of call them my library kids. They're just around and they're always, chatting with me and looking for things to do. Sometimes they'll
Mm-hmm.
say, okay, I kind of want to reorganize the series in this fantasy area. And I'm like, okay, go ahead.
Nice. Oh man. Yeah. I have had sort of an organized, semi-organized group of students on and off, and they kind of like as the year when the year starts, they want to all be there because it's new and it's different. And then like as I give them actual tasks to do, it tends to be like, oh, there's a thing that I
Yes.
have to actually try and follow through on. And it's
Yes.
the attrition, lost some students through attrition here, but this idea of giving them these collages and letting them go nuts with like coming up with the ideas and rearranging the space. Like I definitely I need to give them more of that hands-on control of the space and give them more of that creativity to work with. But oh boy, my mind is just spinning with all the possibilities here. This is so cool. Boy.
Well, when they come twice a month, it's, I feel it's like lesson planning.
Yeah.
And now that I've been at the school long enough, I'm trying to scaffold it. So like these, um, the beat the clock book talks, for example, with the top 100 books,
Uh-huh.
I'm not going to talk about those books again for next year's grade 7.
Right.
So I'm starting to be able to build in some things that I can repeat
Uh-huh.
as they come in, and then add new things for the older ones.
Yeah. Well, and that's something that I worry sometimes, especially when I'm talking with younger librarians or like student librarians, and they're like, "Oh my gosh, I saw this person had all these awesome things, and how am I ever going to do that?" It's like that doesn't happen overnight. Like that's not a
No.
one-time thing. This is years and years of work to build up these different kinds of programs and ideas and lessons. And so I love that you're sort of making that very patently obvious here as we talk through like this is something that is building and growing over time and
Yep.
building those
And
resources that you can come back to. Sorry.
Yes, and just the challenge of staying on top of all the stuff that's coming out. I mean, I've been doing this a long time, so I can talk about a lot of books off the top of my head, but I
Hmm.
can't do that for the new ones.
Right.
And so it's really a constant, kind of piece of my homework is to
Right.
be able to talk about what's coming in.
Well, that was oh no, I'm going to be a terrible host and forget the name of who I was just talking to about this recently, but on a recent episode, we one of my guests was saying how they do a book award and they are very specifically choosing books from the year previous, not the current year, so
Hmm.
that they've got that time to sort of read the books and be familiar with the books, and the students have time to read the books and be familiar with the books before they start selecting what they think is the best one, because
Yeah,
that's something that I always found a little I don't want to say problematic, but it's really difficult to know like what are all the great latest and greatest, because there's so much great stuff coming out every year.
yeah,
And just staying on top of that alone is could be a full-time job. These people who read 300, 400, 500 books a year, I'm like, how do you do that?
I know, I know. Well,
So
and sometimes I'll tell the kids a secret, which is that I don't read the whole book. I can still talk about it even if I haven't read the whole thing. So,
that actually can maybe be a great lesson in itself, is like showing students how to get information about a book that you haven't necessarily read all the way through, because I am stunned at some of the students who don't know that, like, oh yeah, on the back of the book or on the flyleaf inside is a list of here's what the book is sort of about, like here's a quick summary. They just don't know. And I'm working with middle schoolers, so I would, by that point, I would hope they would have more familiarity with books. But sometimes we take for granted that they're going to know things that, we feel like they should know that they don't necessarily know. So I love that idea of, yeah, maybe you don't read the whole book, but you can still get a sense of here's what it's about and decide if you want to dig into it further. Because
absolutely.
I mean, we're doing that all the time as readers, not even as professionals, just as readers. You hear about a book or you see a book and you kind of flip through it a little bit to see, is this something I want to go further with? Because there's more books than there is time. And I always tell my kids, there's way too many good books in the world to read a bad book. So if you don't like something, put it aside, pick up something else.
And it's personal. I mean, I think most
Yes.
libraries have a wide range of topics available. And so I tell the kids this is between you and yourself to decide what's right for you. So spend some time because this might not be the book for you.
Yes, absolutely. And that's one thing I have been really working hard at, because I used to be very much I loved this, so you will love this. And it kind of gives that impression to the student that if they don't like it, either there's something wrong with them or
Hmm.
they are not on the same page as you, so they're not going to trust you for book recommendations. So
Hmm.
I have been trying to sort of roll that back and say, I really like this. I would love to hear what your thoughts are. If you don't like it, that's okay. You're not going to offend me.
Yeah,
But give it a shot and see. And if you don't like it, come on back. We'll find you something that does work for you. Because it's so, I mean, I get super excited about all sorts of stuff, but when it's books, especially, I'm like, oh my gosh, this is so amazing. And uh, I have colleagues who come to me with the same. There's a couple of colleagues in my building who are wonderful human beings and amazing English teachers and readers galore, but we have very different taste in books. And they will come and say, "Oh my gosh, this book was so amazing! You've got to read it." And I will struggle through a chapter or two and be like, "This is just not for me. This is I love that you loved it, doesn't work for me." And so like I try and bear that in mind, that moment of me feeling like, yeah, this isn't working for me, when I'm talking to the student, and say like, it's okay if you don't like this. You're not going to offend. It's perfectly okay. Like you said, personal. Got to find the things that work for you.
for sure.
So you have been doing this obviously for a while. You've been building up these different kinds of elements to your program. Have you are there any particular kinds of things that you feel like you are differentiating for different either levels of students or ability levels? Or I know grades. You're working with grades at 6 through 12.
I work through, yeah, grades 6 through 12 are
Uh-huh.
my, my whole student body that
Uh-huh.
I'm with. We're a pre-K through 12 school, but I'm just with 6 through 12. The ones
Okay.
I see in a fixed manner twice a week are grades 6 through 8,
Okay.
and then grades 9 and 10 come once a month. And I
Okay.
do book talks for them as well,
Uh-huh.
but I don't see them as much. So I just don't have quite as many things going
Right.
on for them.
Yeah.
And for
Yeah.
them, I tend to keep it shorter because I don't know, I just feel like they really need as much of the free time to read as possible.
Yeah.
So whereas maybe for middle school, I'm doing more scavenger hunts and running around kinds of stuff, I don't do that as much for high school.
Sure. No, that totally
But in
makes
terms
sense.
of the differentiation, yeah, I mean, it's something that is there, but I don't tend to talk about it too much in the book talks in terms of, I don't tend to say this will be easy, this will be challenging. I just kind of
Right.
talk about the story, and then I make sure that they have time in the reading time to get into that first chapter and see the words. And
Gotcha.
um, so, in terms of actively thinking about differentiation in the context of the book talks, I don't worry too much about it.
Uh-huh.
But one on one, when I'm doing, those little individual conversations that happen all the time about, what should I read next, then I really do make sure to point them to something that will fit with the level that they've identified for themselves,
Right. Right.
which they do usually without even knowing it because I'm asking them what was the last book that worked for you, and
Right.
I kind of know enough about it to direct them to something similar.
Yeah. Well, and I also sometimes I get a little frustrated with people who talk about the reading levels and their kids have to read at certain reading levels. And I'm like, the kids, yes, you're going to have struggling readers who are going to pick up books that are above them. But saying, no, you can't read that, to me is like, what are you doing? If the kid wants to try and read this, like when they're motivated, they will figure out the parts that work for them. And if they only read half of it, so what? They've tried it and they've exposed themselves to something. So, let them run with it. But also finding those books that, like you said, are going to be the ones that they're going to identify with and really, want to dig into and come back to.
Hmm.
It's always a little bit of a tricky balance, especially in those middle grade years, I feel like, because middle graders, boy, you get such a wide range of interests and abilities, and just even the same kid from year to year is going to be so radically different. So,
Yes, they
yeah,
grow and change so much within the year. It's a
yeah.
very exciting time.
Yes, yes. Exciting is a good way to think about it. A lot of change. Love it. Love it. So I mean, clearly the students are engaged with this stuff, that they are involved. They are, running up to get their books. They are, finding those things that work for them. I'm kind of curious, have you gotten any feedback from the teachers about how the students are engaging with their reading when you're able to do these with them?
The teachers love the library time. They love the book talks. I think, and they have told me one of the things that's really good for them is to also hear about the books themselves because
Yes.
they also have that challenge of staying up on, what's current.
The ELA teachers, I know, I mean, as a longtime ELA teacher, you tend to focus on like, here's the book I'm going to teach. And that is the thing that I'm paying the most attention to. And although you might read a couple of other things, like it, as an English teacher, I was reading tons of stuff, but it wasn't necessarily stuff I could bring into school. So I agree that like giving the English teachers these ideas of, here are some things that might be interesting, because that might spark that connection to say like, oh, this would make a great pair of text. I didn't know that was out there. Or, oh, maybe
Yes.
that's something we need to think about for the curriculum for the future. Because I've
Yes.
got absolutely had teachers come in after a summer and be like, we rewrote curriculum this year and I heard you talk about this book. And so now that's part of the curriculum. So it's like, awesome, great, bring it. So I love that you bring up the idea that we might be book talking for the teachers just as much as the students.
Yes, because they also need entry points to talk to the kids about what they are reading.
Yeah.
So the way that we can, encourage independent reading is really about around talking about books as much as we can. And
Yes.
when their teachers also are seeming interested in what they're reading and
Uh-huh.
encouraging them to read, it really does take a village on this. And me doing book talks is only the beginning.
Uh-huh.
And so the more involved the teachers are, the better. So yeah, they enjoy it.
Yeah, I bet they do. And I imagine that there's moments, and it's probably not all the time, but there's going to be moments where the teachers are going to see a student reading a book that they heard about, and they're going to talk to that student about, oh, you got to let me know what you think of that, because that sounded really good, and I might want to read that when you're done with it. Just that one little bridge sometimes can make all the difference for
That's
those
right.
readers. So
Yes.
love it. Absolutely love it. So these are, I mean, you're getting good feedback from your students, you're getting good feedback from your teachers. This is amazing. I love all these different ways that you are engaging your students with reading as a not just as a like thing that you have to do, but as a thing that you want to do, as a thing that is enjoyable, as a thing that can be gamified, as a thing that can be social, because we too often think about reading as being just it's an individual reading a book, and you're kind of bringing this different element to it of, okay, can I talk about this book fast enough? And so it's like got that sort of, oh my gosh, will she, won't she, what's going to happen here element to it. And kind of connecting that with reading, I think, adds that element of joy that sometimes is a little bit easy to get lost in school, I think, when it comes to reading. We focus so much on the accountability side, and this is really a much more engaging and fun way to sort of get the kids thinking about this. So I love and appreciate that you are doing this with your students. I hope that they are aware how lucky they are to have a school librarian that is bringing them into the reading process like this, because it's so great.
They are wonderful. I'm so lucky to be working with these kiddos.
So people are definitely going to want to try some of these things, like without a doubt. I mean, I'm already making my list of how am I going to introduce all of these as soon as possible. But do you have any suggestions for folks who are sort of they're just hearing about these ideas for the first time? They want to maybe step into some of these. Anything they should have in mind as they're sort of getting ready to try this out for the first time?
Well, I think for people who are maybe less comfortable with doing book talks, just talking about books, um, I like to think of it as just a very, very short story. And so just getting right to who's the character, where is it happening, what is the problem, that all can be talked about very quickly, and you can almost always get it from the back and a couple of reviews.
Uh-huh.
Um, I don't tend to talk too much about why I liked it. I tend to talk about the story.
Uh-huh.
And so I think that can be a helpful way to start. And then if you really want to ramp it up, maybe you have some kind of a hook at the beginning or some kind of a cliffhanger statement at the end where the kids are, kind of like, oh, what's going to happen? Um, but for me, the shorter the better. Because again, I've got 20 kids there. I want them all to be able to take something as much as possible.
Right. I'm kind of curious. Do you have multiple copies of a lot of the books that you're book talking?
I do. I do.
Okay.
So those books that are on our recommended list, I have 4 or 5 copies of each of those each year. And then if it's the beginning of a book in a series, I'll try to get 2 or 3 of that first book. Anything that's seeming to be popular quickly, I try to get a bunch of those. They
Uh-huh.
love to read the same thing as their friends, and
Yeah.
so it can be a little bit strange, I think, for some people to realize how important it is to have those duplicates.
Yeah, well, that's something I've definitely struggled with as I've been trying to build our collection, because there's only so much money to go around, and like there's so many great things, and I want that, I want that, I want that. But like you're saying, they love to read with their friends. I was able to put together a book display tower of reading with my peeps, and it's just
Mm,
whatever I've got 4, 5, 6 copies of are sitting on this thing. And there was a group that came through, and they were like locusts. They went to that, and it was like, oh, we're gonna all read this. Well, we're gonna all read this, and
yeah.
just it's it's funny because it's not something I had really thought a whole lot about in terms of like, because when I read, I tend to just read what I want to read, and I'll talk about it with my friends, but we're not necessarily reading the same thing at the same time. And I mean, now you've got me actually thinking back to when I was in middle school. There were a couple of series that like me and my friends would all get the same book at about the same time and read it together.
Hmm.
I never really made that connection to the library could be that source, because we didn't really have much of a school library at the time. So it was us going out and buying our books, but I should have been
And
saving a buck.
it's it's the word of mouth thing. So if I've got 5 kids reading that book, all loving it, that's 5 people who are quickly going to tell a whole bunch more. So
Yes.
it really
Yes.
spreads very quickly.
Man, boy, now I got to think about how I'm going to budget. So many elements, but so good, so worthwhile. This is just, I love all of this. Obviously, this is just, there's so much great stuff that you've got going on, and your students are so lucky to have you doing all of this for them. I think we are at the point where we're going to take our 90-degree turn into our book break.
Book break. Swiggity.
All right.
Any kind of book you want to share, could be personal, professional, whatever it is. What do you want people to know that they should be getting on their reading radar?
Well, I just finished an absolutely fantastic young adult book. Even though I love middle schoolers, uh, of course, all the young adult stuff coming out right now is just so good.
Yeah.
And so another librarian recommended this to me. It's called Everything We Never Had, and it's by Randy Ribay.
Okay.
And it's about 4 generations of Filipino men or young men. So the main narrator is a teenager who's living in the US during COVID.
Okay.
But the story is about him, his father, his grandfather, his great grandfather. The great grandfather was the first one to move to the US. And it's really just about multi generational trauma and the migrant story and
Mm,
family relationships and fathers and sons and young men being vulnerable, talking about feelings or not talking about feelings and
mm,
what that can do to a family.
mhm.
I just found it to be a very quick and engaging and really, I don't know, just a timely read, not just the COVID piece, but just what's happening with teenage boys. I really, really loved it.
Yeah.
Everything We Never Had, it's called.
Okay. I'm definitely going to have to get that on my list because I read Patron Saints of Nothing by Randy Ribay, and
Yes,
that was a great book. I mean, just amazing. And I know he's got several others. In fact, one of my students recently asked me about one of his other books, and I don't know why, because we don't have it in the library. It's not in our collection, but he came in and he was like, "Oh, can I get this book?" And I was like, "I don't think we have that. Let me look." And I couldn't find any place. And I was like, "Where did you hear about this?" And he was like, "Oh, I thought I saw it in the display down the hall." I was like, "No." So no idea where he got this book title from, but I'm like, well, now I've got to add that too to the list. So that's going to just constantly growing. But that sounds amazing. And I love, I absolutely think we need more representation. We need to have plenty of books about everybody from everybody. I have absolutely built my collection up over the past couple of years, focused a lot more on having female protagonists. And so we've got tons of female protagonists. And I actually am now having a little bit of trouble finding male protagonists in some of our books too, for some of our students who, for some whatever reason, aren't willing to read about female protagonists, which is ridiculous, but that's a whole other kettle of fish. So Rander Bay really does write a great book about, especially like you said, a YA male protagonist who is dealing with stuff. And I think so many of especially our young male students, our YA students, are not necessarily connecting with those important ideas and those important emotional elements. And Randy Rebay does such a great job of bringing those in. I didn't even know this was a book that he had out. So I'm really thankful that you brought this to us.
you're welcome.
This has been so wonderful. I am so glad we got to connect. If people want to go looking for you online, where should they find you?
Blog called Try Curiosity, and I'm on LinkedIn.
Love it.
So, yeah,
Those are your main spots. Love
those
it.
are my main spots.
All right. Well, Sarah, thank you so much. I appreciate you taking the time and helping me figure out this time zone difference, because that was definitely a hurdle I had trying to. I'll tell your audience that I scheduled us reversed order of time zone and kind of almost blew everything out of the water. So I really appreciate your patience and that you took the time to come and share all this with us. So thank you so much.
Absolutely my pleasure. Thank you so much for reaching out.
Thanks for checking out this episode of the SLLN podcast. Be sure to check out the show notes, which include not only a link to the lesson, but also links to the SLLN website, home to a curated list of free upcoming virtual events and resources for school librarians. It's easy to become a member of the network. Just visit the site and use what you like. If you have an idea, a question, or a lesson you want to share, you can email schoolliblearning@gmail.com. That's school, L-I-B, learning@gmail.com. Know someone with a great school library lesson? Let us know. Until next time, be safe, be good, and be well.